I saw last week the most embarrassing interview by the dumbest diplomat, or someone pretending to be one, Steve Witkoff, who's actually just a real estate guy and Donald Trump's golfing buddy who donated millions to the US president's campaign. Yet Trump chose Witkoff to handle the two deadliest foreign crises around. Witkoff is now Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, trying to end the war Hamas terrorists started against Israel, and has twice visited Moscow to ask Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire in the war he started in Ukraine. Now, it was bad enough that Witkoff agreed on Friday to be interviewed by Tucker Carlson, a pro-Putin shill who claims that a demon attacked him in his bed and left claw marks. Is that nuts? But worse was that Witkoff also parroted Putin's spin about Ukrainian territory rightfully belonging to Russia, although he couldn't actually remember which regions of Ukraine Putin wants and which Trump is considering letting him have.
I think the largest issue in that conflict are these so-called four regions: Donbass,
yes.
Crimea, the names
Lugansk, yeah.
Lugansk, and there's two others. They're Russian-speaking.
Yep.
There have been referendums where the overwhelming majority of the people have indicated that they want to be under Russian rule.
Yes.
I think that's the key issue in the conflict.
In fact, Russia claims 5 regions, not 4. None called Donbass. There's Crimea in the south and Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, Kherson and Luhansk in the east. And that referendum, he claims, shows people in those regions just wanted to join Russia. They were a fraud. They were held at gunpoint in areas that Russia captured and were clearly rigged. In contrast, in 1991, there was a real referendum on Ukraine's independence, where more than 83% of people in those eastern regions voted to be Ukrainian. And finally, Witkoff truly shamed himself by acting like a total dupe, a Putin fanboy.
I liked him.
Yep.
I thought he was straight up with me. It was enormously gracious for him to accept me. I don't regard Putin as a bad guy.
I mean, how gullible is this guy? I mean, Putin has invaded Georgia, invaded Chechnya, invaded Ukraine twice, and spent the past weeks attacking Ukrainian civilian targets with hundreds and hundreds of drones and missiles. He's killed dozens of his own critics, opposition politicians, and journalists. And this clown Witkoff likes him, says he's not a bad guy. And the final excerpt from this disgraceful interview. I mean, let me show you how easy it is for a war criminal like Putin to make Witkoff, this amateur, think, wow, Putin's a nice guy.
President Putin had commissioned a beautiful portrait of President Trump from the leading Russian artist and actually gave it to me and asked me to take it home to President Trump, which I brought home and delivered to him. It's been reported in the paper, but it was such a gracious moment, and told me a story, Tucker, about how when the president was shot, he went to his local church and met with his priest and prayed for the president, not because he was the president of he could become the president of the United States, but because he had a friendship with him and he was praying for his friend.
And he said he gave the painting to Trump, who was touched. Join me again, back from his sabbatical at last, is the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of The Australian. Greg, great to see you back again. How can Donald Trump have this clown negotiate with Vladimir Putin, one of the world's most cunning dictators?
Well, Andrew, it's great to be with you, and you've done a real public service by playing excerpts of that interview. It was frankly grotesque, embarrassing and shaming. Witkoff has credibility simply because Trump kind of cashes his checks. Trump takes him seriously as an interlocutor, which he doesn't seem to do with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. You know, the Panamanian government made agreements with Rubio which counted for nothing with Trump, and I predict Rubio won't last 4 years with Trump. But that was simply grotesque. It's almost beyond words. I mean, Putin, there was one real Christian leader in Russia, Alexei Navalny, inspired by the Sermon on the Mount to go back and face down Putin's aggression, and Putin had him viciously, cruelly and sadistically murdered in prison. But Putin tells this dingbat that he's praying for Trump. And apparently Trump's imperial ego is so vast that if you pay that kind of tribute, it earns you favour. And, you know, Andrew, like you, I am broadly a critic of the left, and I always thought conspiracies and derangement had their natural political home on the left. But I have to say, a lot of folks who were previously people I had some time for have become grotesque now in their susceptibility to conspiracy, their worship of power figures, their complete absence of morality. A lot of people who thought the Trump election was a good idea, people like Neil Ferguson, Douglas Murray, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, Charles Moore, were horrified by Trump's treatment of Zelensky. And that surely has got to be the most embarrassing TV interview we've ever witnessed.